The city is still asleep, but the water is already breathing. Watch the ladle, watch the hands. Decades of silent mornings poured out in a single perfect circle, thin as mist, resilient as the hands that pull it. There is no recipe written down here, only muscle memory forged in the quiet dark. In this narrow alley, patience is served warm. Long before the first pale streaks of dawn attempt to pierce the heavy charcoal canopy of the Hanoi sky, there is a distinct, solitary rhythm that takes hold of the streets. It is the rhythm of the unseen working class, the silent architects of the morning. The cobblestones of this narrow alleyway remain slick, bathed in a lingering nighttime mist that holds the damp chill of a northern Vietnamese winter. Shadows here are not merely an absence of light. They are thick, protective garments wrapped tightly around the sleeping facades of old colonial houses and rusted corrugated iron roofs. In this profound darkness, the ambient temperature carries a biting, unforgiving edge. Yet, this cold isolation is about to be broken. A single, low-hanging incandescent bulb flickers to life, dangling precariously from a frayed wire overhead. It casts a sudden, dramatic amber glow, carving out a sanctuary of light against the deep charcoal canvas of the waking city. This is not a grand stage. It is a soot-stained cooking station, weathered by time, rain, and relentless use. Yet it commands a quiet, indisputable reverence. Listen closely to the wide, echoing ambience of the world at 4 a.m. Far off, the low, steady hum of a distant cargo barge navigating the dark waters of the Red River reverberates through the concrete. Closer, the soft, rhythmic, sweeping sound of a street sweeper's bamboo broom bristles against the wet asphalt, a metronomic heartbeat of the city's underbelly. And then, there is the water. The alchemy of the morning begins with the violent collision of fire and water. Beneath a massive, wide-mouthed aluminum pot, a honeycomb coal stove, the traditional bepthentoang burns with a fierce, quiet intensity. The glowing embers radiate a visceral heat, pushing aggressively against the winter cold. Atop this metal crucible sits the canvas, a perfectly flat, taut white cotton cloth stretched immaculately across the wide rim of the pot. It is secured tightly by a thin, hidden wire, holding the fabric under immense tension, transforming the soft cotton into a rigid drumhead of culinary creation. Inside the deep metal belly, gallons of water reach a rolling, furious boil. The intense heat forces thick, volumetric columns of steam to billow upward, pushing relentlessly through the microscopic pores of the taut cloth. The steam dances wildly into the freezing air, catching the amber light of the single bulb, creating shifting, glowing clouds of water vapor. This is the environment of the creator, a world defined entirely by the extreme, contrasting elements of scalding heat and freezing mist, of blinding amber light and crushing black shadow. Enter the artisan. She does not wear the polished uniform of a professional kitchen, nor does she seek the gaze of an audience. She wears a faded, oversized woolen cardigan, layered heavily over a patterned floral shirt, the pragmatic, layered armor of the northern working class, designed to withstand the biting chill. Her posture is a profound testament to her life's work. She leans forward slightly over the steaming pot, her shoulders relaxed but permanently engaged in the habitual, repetitive labor of survival. Her face is a living map of quiet resilience, etched with deep lines that are starkly highlighted by the harsh, dramatic chiaroscuro lighting. She is completely unaware of the camera, lost in a state of deep, moving meditation. Look closely at her hands. They are heavily weathered, deeply calloused, and stained by decades of relentless work. These hands hold the history of her family, the heavy weight of her survival, and the profound dignity of her labor. In her right hand, she grasps a worn, half-coconut shell attached to a sturdy wooden handle. It is a humble, ancient tool, its edges polished incredibly smooth by years of constant friction against the palm of her hand. Consider the rice itself, the very foundation of this quiet theater. It cannot be new rice, fresh from the harvest, for new rice holds too much moisture, too much youthful starch. It must be aged, allowed to sit and mature in the dark for months until its character changes, becoming dry and disciplined. Only then is it milled and soaked, breaking down over hours in cold water until it yields a batter that possesses the precise, exacting viscosity required to stretch across the drum of the steaming pot. This fundamental knowledge is not learned from recipe books. It is a sacred inheritance, passed down through generations of women who have memorized the exact, granular feel of the batter rubbing between their thumb and forefinger. She dips her coconut ladle into a deep plastic bucket filled with this opaque, milky white liquid. The hollow, wooden resonance of the coconut shell, striking the side of the bucket, cuts sharply through the ambient noise. A hyper-realistic, close mic capture that signals the definitive beginning of the physical transformation. With a fluid, sweeping motion born of 10,000 dark mornings, she pours the heavy batter onto the steaming, taut cloth. The sharp, immediate hiss as the cold liquid meets the boiling heat of the fabric is the visceral sound of alchemy in motion. Her hand moves with a slight, almost imperceptible motion blur, sweeping the curved bottom of the coconut ladle in rapid, expanding concentric circles. She is spreading the viscous batter outward, pushing it with absolute precision to the very edges of the expansive canvas. It must be perfectly even, impossibly thin, yet structurally sound enough to survive the lift. In a matter of seconds, the opaque liquid begins to change, cooked instantly by the aggressive steam rising forcefully through the cotton. It transforms before our eyes into a solid, glistening, translucent sheet of rice, a fragile membrane that looks as delicate and ephemeral as a layer of morning frost. While the rice sheet steams rapidly beneath a large, domed metal lid, the rhythmic acoustic landscape of the alleyway shifts. The biomechanical ASMR of human labor takes over the audio spectrum. To her side, resting on a battered, dented aluminum tray that has survived thousands of services, lies the earth. Mismatched ceramic bowls hold the raw fillings. She wields a heavy, dark steel cleaver over a thick, deeply scarred wooden chopping block. The sound is methodical, heavy, and intensely percussive. A rapid, rhythmic thwack, 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 echoing against the brick walls. She is violently mincing seasoned ground pork and dark, gelatinous wood ear mushrooms. The meat provides the rich, savory anchor, while the mushrooms offer a distinct, necessary textural crunch. The physical toll of this relentless, repetitive motion is immense, yet her cadence never falters, never slows. Drops of sweat begin to bead on her forehead, catching the amber light from the bulb, serving as a physical, undeniable manifestation of the arduous labor required to produce something so seemingly delicate. The friction of the heavy knife, the stubborn resistance of the scarred wood, the visceral tactility of the raw ingredients, this is the unromanticized, factual reality of the street. It is a daily struggle waged every morning long before the sun rises, a brutal battle against time, physical fatigue, and the relentless, screaming demand of the boiling water. The climax of the craft is rapidly approaching. The heavy metal lid is swiftly lifted, releasing a sudden, dramatic explosion of thick white steam that entirely engulfs the cinematic frame. Through the slowly clearing mist, the finished rice sheet is fully revealed. It is breathtaking in its extreme fragility, glistening heavily with trapped moisture, its thin edges curling slightly upward from the heat. Now comes the moment of ultimate tension, the true, unforgiving test of the artisan's skill. She takes up a long, flat, incredibly thin bamboo stick. This simple, unadorned sliver of wood acts as her surgical scalpel. With breathtaking precision, she slides the flat bamboo directly beneath the paper-thin, almost entirely transparent rice layer. The delicate, papery rustle of the wet rice slowly peeling away from the tension of the cotton cloth is a sound so incredibly intimate, it feels like a secret whispered in the dark. She lifts the entire sheet seamlessly into the air. It hangs there, suspended for a fraction of a second, completely translucent, fiercely backlit by the glowing amber hearth fire, billowing slightly in the cold, creeping draft of the alleyway. It is a moment of pure, elevated cinematic suspension, a visual testament to the sheer resilience of the rice grain and the flawless, mechanical technique of the human hands that hold it. She gently drapes the steaming, fragile sheet onto a heavily oiled metal tray. With swift, highly practiced movements, she rapidly spoons a thick, generous line of the earthy, savory pork and wood ear mushroom mixture directly onto the center of the delicate canvas. Then, using only the bare tips of her calloused fingers, completely ignoring the searing, burning heat of the freshly steamed dough, she folds the fragile skin over the dark filling. It is a gentle, incredibly rapid tucking motion, wrapping the rugged, heavy earth safely within the delicate, translucent mist. The finished rolls are quickly stacked onto a plate, appearing absolutely luminous and structurally flawless, their taut, wet skins proudly revealing the dark, savory treasure hidden just beneath the surface. And then comes the final, crowning stroke of the brush. From a small, deeply oil-stained bowl, she pinches a tight cluster of crispy, deeply golden fried shallots. They fall through the air in slow motion, dropping heavily onto the pristine, pearl-white surface of the plated banh quan. As the brittle shallots make contact with the hot, oiled skin of the rice roll, a profound, shifting, musical awakening occurs. The minimalist soundscape, which has been quietly simmering with the low, sustained, anxious drone of a cello mimicking the boiling water, suddenly and dramatically swells. A single, deeply resonant, weeping note from a traditional Vietnamese dan bo bends aggressively and cries out into the freezing morning air. It is a sound of immense triumph, of deep cultural melancholy, and of undeniable, staggering beauty. The visual and auditory climax align with devastating perfection. The amber, shattered shallots resting against the smooth, pearl-white rice, entirely bathed in dramatic, high-contrast chiaroscuro lighting, serenaded by the soul-stirring, ancient cry of the monochord. It looks exactly like a meticulously crafted 17th century oil painting, a genuine masterpiece forged not on a rich canvas, but on a freezing, soot-stained street corner. To quietly observe this grueling process is to witness something far greater and more important than the simple preparation of a morning breakfast. It is a profound masterclass in the unshakable dignity of the unseen working class. We, the cinematic observers, must remain respectfully hidden in the deep shadows, not daring to interrupt this sacred, ancestral rhythm with loud interrogations, bright lights, or demands for precise recipes. The story unfolding here is not about measurements, ratios, or data. It is a human saga of endurance. Every perfect, agonizing fold of the fragile rice sheet is deeply anchored in historical context and collective community memory. These women, these quiet, stoic, street-side matriarchs, are the true, undisputed custodians of the Vietnamese culinary soul. They absolutely do not cook for the applause of an audience or the viral fame of the modern world. They cook because it is their sole livelihood, their cultural identity, and their source of quiet, immeasurable pride. Their intense self-respect is clearly manifested in the immaculate cleanliness of their taut cotton cloth, in the precise, deadly chop of their heavy steel cleavers, and in their stubborn refusal to serve anything less than absolute perfection to the waking citizens of the city. They silently endure the bone-chilling cold, the searing, burning heat of the steam, the extreme physical exhaustion of the repetitive labor, and the relentless, uncaring passage of time. Yet they remain fundamentally unbroken. They are the human kitchen, the very beating heart of the old streets, commanding a profound respect and admiration that easily transcends spoken language. Their physical pain and daily struggle are brutally factual, never fictionalized or exaggerated for dramatic effect. And out of that harsh, unforgiving reality, they miraculously produce moments of fleeting, edible poetry. The swelling music slowly begins to recede, the emotional, weeping cry of the danbo fading gently back into the deep, echoing, ambient reality of the alleyway. The climax of creation has passed, leaving in its heavy wake a quiet, lingering echo of peace. In the protective charcoal shadows just beyond the reach of the warm, amber light, a solitary first customer sits hunched on a low, blue plastic stool. He eats his meal in total, absolute silence, his head bowed low in a posture of unconscious, deep reverence for the incredible labor set before him. The only sounds remaining in the cold air are the soft, rhythmic clinking of wooden chopsticks scraping against the edge of a ceramic bowl, and the visceral, highly satisfying sound of his quiet consumption. Back at the glowing, hot hearth, the elderly vendor finally allows herself a momentary, necessary pause. She sets the worn coconut ladle down onto the metal tray. She raises a heavy, weathered arm to slowly wipe the thick condensation and beads of sweat from her deeply lined brow. She looks out into the dark, empty alley, her gaze distant, incredibly tired, and highly contemplative. It is a fleeting, entirely unposed moment of rest, a brief, desperate intake of breath before the next grueling cycle inevitably begins. The grand city is finally starting to wake from its slumber. The low, aggressive hum of motorbike engines begins to grow steadily in the far distance. The morning wind gently rattles a loose, corrugated iron door down the street. But right here, in this incredibly small, glowing sphere of warmth and steam, the ancient rhythm remains eternal and unbroken. The water continues its furious, angry boil. The coals of the fire continue to burn bright amber, and the human hands wait patiently in the dark, ready to pull another perfect, translucent circle from the heavy shadows. The architecture of steam endures,